Hi all and welcome to another week of the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams and it only seems like yesterday since we did Sunday's show. For those who only tune in of a Thursday, I will repeat a portion of the extra show we did on Sunday in the second hour, and so look forward to that, as I know there's far more people who listen to the show than there are members on the Facebook page or the MeWe. So I'll be replaying a portion of that just before the Intel. Right, let's get into the details of the show, and the links for the show is www.spreaker.com/user/8955881, and we also have the articles website called thinkdifferent.thepeoplesclub.org. Now, all the special shows that we've done, it's under the category must listen to, are archived on that site, and also the show you can listen live from there as well. And it's got all the other links and ground and centering and shielding documents and self-empowerment. There's all kinds on there, so go in there, check that out. We have Facebook, social media, Truth, Honour and Integrity, and the social media alternative called MeWe.com, and that's Truth, Honour and Integrity also. If you're having difficulty finding MeWe, you can send an email to truth.honour.and.integrity@gmail.com. You can send questions and comments to that email as well. I don't always get time to reply. Sometimes I just put it into the show as a question. But my time is rather short at the moment. And we have the People's Club donation website when the foundation's all ready to launch. And that's thepeoplesclub.org. And of course now I've got a Patreon. I finally gave in because I can't do this day job anymore and carry on doing all these shows and the research and all kinds of other stuff there behind the scenes. So if you want to contribute, it's www.patreon.com/TommyW/memberships. Thanks to everyone who's donated already. I'm very humbled by it all, but once we get the target, I will quit work and I will focus more on the shows and the stuff that's far more important than being a property maintenance manager. But there you go. Right, let's get into the details. We do have intel, and like I said, I'll repeat the portion of Sunday's show. Not about the trust, but about the quantum system and all that entails. In fact, we've got a fair bit of intel and a fair bit of responses and a load of op-ed pieces. So the show's packed again, and we may have time for some questions and answers. I know we didn't get to it last week, but I think most people prefer the op-eds and the intel, but we may get round to some. Anyway, let's get into some news. You could probably spend a 3-hour show just going through the news, but I picked a few bits out during the week, and here are some of them. So the United States could reap billions in online sales tax revenue. And this is after a nation's top court ruled last Thursday that e-commerce companies could be required to collect the money, and even if they have no physical presence in a state. So this is going to shake up the the online no tax malarkey. Of course, some states already apply tax, but a lot more don't. And anyway, the Supreme Court's ruling in favour of South Dakota and against Wayfair and two other online retailers was a victory for state governments and a boost for brick-and-mortar stores. And the effect is expected to be positive and widespread because 45 states imposes sales taxes and until now were barred from requiring those companies to collect remote sales tax. That meant that state and local governments lost as much as $13 billion of revenue in 2017. Now, states can push ahead with legislation requiring companies to collect and remit sales tax for goods bought online, whether it's in the state or not. Now, the states that rely more heavily on sales tax as opposed to personal income tax, for instance, will be the big winners here and could see real budget gains if they follow South Dakota's example. It is suggested that 24 states and their local governments could see tax revenue gains of at least 1%. And for large states like Texas, the combined state and local revenue growth could be as high as $1.2 billion per year and will likely grow over time. Now, you got Washington, Florida, South Dakota, Nevada, and Tennessee get more than half of their total revenue from sales tax, which means big gains could be used in the stores. An analysis by Barclays found that Louisiana would get an estimated 3% bump in total tax receipts if it begins forcing out-of-state online retailers to collect sales tax. Oklahoma is another one expected to have a reasonable gain of 2.7%, but it doesn't apply to all, particularly the ones that don't charge sales tax, like Alaska, Delaware, Montana, New Hampshire, and Oregon. New Hampshire's lack of sales tax is a competitive advantage for our state, and this decision will unfairly punish small businesses that are a backbone of our economy, said Senator Maggie Hassan in a statement on Thursday. We covered the fashion designer. Well, that's what she was known as, labelled as anyway. Of course, she was also involved with Clinton and Haiti and shenanigans that went on there. Well, of course, she, according to the mainstream media, committed suicide. Well, now her father has died last Wednesday, and a family spokesman says just as his daughter's funeral in Kansas City was about to start, unfortunately, the father passed away as well, 2 minutes before the funeral mass. Things that make you go, The House Republican immigration overhaul dangled precariously last Thursday. Of course, it's already been voted upon, and it's set for more fun and games. And impeded by stubborn differences between conservative and moderate factions, and by President Donald Trump's running commentary about a bill he only half-heartedly supported and then suggests would never become law. And Republican leaders were twice forced to postpone the final voting, first until Friday and then pushing it to next week, which was today. And negotiators had made a last-ditch push for support, and they were trying to persuade colleagues to seize the moment and tackle immigration problems by approving the bill, which includes $25 billion for Trump's border wall and a path to citizenship for young immigrants who have lived in the US illegally since childhood. And the House Majority Whip, Steve Scalise, said Thursday evening that they were trying to keep consensus on the legislation. I believe that bill failed today. I've not had a chance to catch up with too much of the news, apart from a rather bizarre shooting, which we'll cover later. Now, part of what's been going on with the Manor World Holding Trust and the quantum system what this has forced in many aspects is the banks to fly straight or face the consequences. And in the past week, they have basically had fiscal tests known as annual stress tests, and the 35 largest US banks have all cleared the first stage of what will become an annual stress test, showing they will be able to maintain enough capital in an extreme recession to meet regulatory requirements. Now, although the banks, including household names like JP Morgan, Citigroup and Bank of America, would suffer about $578 billion in total losses in the Fed's most severe scenario to date, their level of high-quality capital will be substantially higher than the threshold that regulators demand, and higher levels than are seen immediately leading up to the 2007-2009 crisis, according to the Fed. The reality is they haven't got much at the moment, real reality. But that could all change. It makes me laugh how he keeps mentioning the 2007-2009 crisis like it all ended in 2009. It's still ongoing. Perhaps they meant 2019. Where are we next? France. Another chief executive and managers being brought to justice, this time in France's telecom company. The chief executive and 6 other managers are to stand trial over a spate of suicides amongst their staff since the late 2000s. Excuse me. Prosecutors have long claimed they presided over a culture of harassment at the firm that led to at least 19 employees to kill themselves. Really? And they've been accused of moral harassment, and ex-boss Didier Lombard and his fellow defendants deny their tough restructuring measures in 2006 were to blame for the subsequent loss of life. And a push for greater efficiency came 2 years after the company was privatised. Doesn't it just? Mr. Lombard was trying to cut 22,000 jobs and retrain at least 10,000 workers, and stated, "I'll get them out one way or another, through the window or through the door," he said. Really? Perhaps Mr. Lombard needs to follow his other bankers and jump from a tall building. Anyway, from 2008 onwards, at least 19 members of staff have taken their own lives, and 12 others have attempted suicide, and 8 others suffered from depression and other related illnesses. Not good. This is what has to change in many aspects of how your company is only as good as your staff, no matter how much people want to control. And if staff aren't happy, your company's not happy and your company suffers. Otherwise it turns into plantation-style slavery. And that's sadly the way corporate bosses are trained to be that way. And it's their way or the highway. Well, ultimately, it would be nice if, for a major company like Amazon, if everyone walked out. Or Walmart. They don't look after staff particularly well either. Let's see how all the managers get on and the CEOs if the whole staff walked out. They soon may have to rethink the way they treat staff. Where are we next? UN and poverty. Philip G. Alston arrived in Washington on a mission from the UN Human Rights Council to document poverty in America. And at his first meeting, Alston said he was told by a senior State Department official that his findings may influence the United States membership in the human rights body. And of course, America pulled out last week. And a senior official said to me my report could be a factor in whether the US decided or not to stay in the council. And the special rapporteur on extreme poverty and human rights, who declined to name the official, stated, "I think I was being sent a message." Two other people at the meeting, speaking on condition of anonymity, confirmed Alston's account, and he was kind of threatened. The 20-page Alston report found that the United States has amongst the most chronic rates of poverty among all nations in the developed world, and that President Trump's policies are likely to exacerbate them. I wouldn't say that, but a lot needs to change. Liberal critics, whoever liberals are, seized on Alston's findings to say that the Trump administration was failing to help the nation's poorest citizens. What about Obama? What did he do? Jack. Arguing that when one of the world's wealthiest countries does very little about the fact that 40 million of its citizens live in poverty. Actually, it was 46 million under Obama, so it's gone down 6 million. But then that won't be recognised, will it? It doesn't suit the purpose. And it's entirely appropriate for the reasons to be scrutinised. The report said the United States has the highest rate of youth poverty, infant mortality, incarceration, income inequality, and obesity among all countries in the developed world, as well as 40 million people living in poverty. Now, most of these statistics, funny enough, what they fail to take into account is these were statistics taken from a report in 2016, which is before Trump was elected. And yet Trump gets the blame. Distorted journalism. We're going to see a lot of that. You've been warned that that would take place, and it's starting to ramp up. But we'll find the truth and we'll put it out. Even as growth ramps up to what could be the fastest rate since before the financial crisis, economists are worried that a trade war could tip the US into a significant slowdown or even a recession. Again, it's selective, isn't it? Haven't we been in a slowdown for the last 30 years? Where have all the manufacturing jobs gone? Could that be because of those tariffs? Yes, it was. This has been going on forever. Remember the story in Russia about the grain, and all the American farmers couldn't sell it because they had looted it all for free in Russia, 1919. It just keeps repeating. Now, fears over a GDP pullback comes as President Donald Trump threatens another round of more severe tariffs aimed at both China and the European Union. Well, they've been looting this country for long enough. He's just stopped it. The loss in jobs because of the tariffs can quite quickly be replaced with an opening of the Manor World Holding Trust and all the projects, and a return to a manufacturing-based country, not service, minimum wage jobs oriented like we are now. 83% is service. 83% of all American jobs is the service industry. In other words, minimum wage. And according to the report, the worry is that the duties could spark a larger global trade war that triggers inflation and kills US growth, just as it appears to be accelerating out of its post-crisis malaise. Well, you can't have it both ways. They've been saying on the portal people have been saying that the growth is stagnating. Now they're saying it's accelerating, but it doesn't suit the purpose. These people are the portal people. You know, they can continue to push their fear porn, or they can get on board with the Man of World Holding Trust and also American sovereignty. Because then we don't have any problems. We can solve and fix everything in-house. And if the rest of the world then wants to trade with us, fine. But we're not getting raped like we have been for the last 100 years. Something all women in the Western world takes for granted, but it doesn't always apply around the rest of the world. I find it bizarre. It's taken until 2018, but as of midnight local time on Saturday, Saudi Arabia women have been allowed to drive for the first time. Unbelievable. The change was announced last September, and Saudi Arabia issued the first licenses to women early this month. It was the only country left in the world where women could not drive and families had to hire private chauffeurs for female relatives. However, the move comes amid an intensified crackdown on activists who campaigned for the right to drive. You're campaigning it, degrading, and you crack down on the activists. There's always got to be something to control or block, isn't there? And at least 8 women's rights activists are being detained and could face trial in a counter-terrorism court and a long prison sentence for their activism. And this is according to the human rights group Amnesty International. How can you continue to keep them in court or in jail when you've already passed a bill that they were complaining about? Mad world. I'll wait for time. Iraq has decided to fight back as well, and it has killed 45 Islamic State group militants this week, and among them some senior leaders in an airstrike in eastern Syria. And the strike targeted 3 houses connected by a trench where ISIS leaders were meeting in the town of Hajin. And the Euphrates Valley area is one of the last parts of Syria that is still under ISIS control. It won't be lasting long. Those killed include the ISIS Deputy War Minister, a media chief, its police chief and leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi's personal courier. And the Iraqi military has been cooperating with the Syrian government in the fight against the militants who are holding out in areas along the border between the two countries. And 98% of territory that was once claimed by ISIS across Iraq and Syria has now been recaptured. Facebook comes under fire again. But Facebook information and sensitive Facebook information for up to 120 million users was put at risk for years by leaky quiz application company called NameTests.com. And this was disclosed today by a security researcher and proving what many experts previously suspected. Cambridge Analytica was the tip of the iceberg. Oops. Now, Inti de Kukele, an ethical hacker and a bug bounty hunter, found that anyone could have accessed the Facebook profile information of users signed up to one of the many big quizzes being circulated via the application. And he discovered that the data, which included names, date of birth, posts, statuses, pictures and friends lists, could be compromised even after the apps were deleted. Unbelievable. Now, the researcher himself uploaded footage of the security issue to YouTube, said in a blog post he was shocked to find that the website would fetch a user's Facebook information and display it on an external web page configured in a way so that it could be accessed and also exploited by literally anyone. In a normal situation, other websites should not be able to access this information. I would suggest getting rid of all apps that are on Facebook. I know some people like to play games, but you have no idea what you're getting yourself into. And as for all the what appears to be fun, where they ask a range of questions, what's your favourite this and favourite that, and that's all data mining for advertisements and worse. Don't fill in anything. You know, if you're going to go on Facebook, just pass comments. That's bad enough, and that's why we set up the MeWe. But please do get rid of all the apps off Facebook. Vatican. Another one's been sentenced. Former Vatican diplomat this time has been sentenced to 5 years in prison for child pornography offences. Monsignor Carlo Alberto Capella pleaded guilty in the Vatican court, really, which heard that dozens of pornographic photos and videos were found on his mobile phone. And he said he had suffered a personal crisis while working at the Vatican Embassy in Washington, D.C., and the priest was recalled from America last year after authorities notified the Vatican of their suspicions. Now, the US had asked for Capella's diplomatic immunity to be lifted so that he could face charges there, and Canadian police later issued an arrest warrant for Capella, who is an Italian, and the former diplomat will serve his sentence in the Vatican's small prison. Really? Which no one can access to see whether he's actually serving it or not. And he also has to pay a fine of €5,000, which is about $5,800, which will now go to come out of the people's donations. No time for them people. Wish we got more than I thought. Price. White House press secretary Sarah Sanders was kicked out of a restaurant on Friday because she works for Donald Trump. Really? You have to laugh, don't you? Anyway, the co-owner of the Red Hen in Lexington, Virginia, the Center for Unintelligence, kind of fitting, really. Anyway, the Red Hen, I'm just wondering whether this is a counter-program to the Blue Chickens crew, asked Ms. Sanders and her family to leave as a protest against the Trump administration. Wonder where were people when Bush was in? You know, who likes that man or that family? Where were these people when Obama was in? Did he ever do anything for the people? It's unbelievable. Ms. Sanders tweeted that her actions say far more about the owner of the Red Hen than about her. And the woman thought that Ms. Sanders worked for an inhumane and unethical administration. He thinks she's not very bright, and certainly is listening to the portal people for far too much. And this incident comes days after Homeland Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen was booed at a Mexican restaurant in Washington, D.C. Well, what this is an example of is the portal people, again, on how they are able to spin the narrative, and unfortunately far too many sheep will follow their behaviour. It's why we have to bring the mainstream media down, and why we have to force those people who are spitting out lies and complete also bullshittery off our TV screens. You don't have to be violent. You just have to tell them we don't want them. Go away. Because this is what they're doing. They're forcing people, on the one hand, into a false reality and a false narrative, all designed while they sit there waiting for the solution. Public react. They have the solution waiting. And they're trying to set up a civil war in America. We are watching closely over the weekend, trust me. But it's essential that we, the people, and particularly the alternative media, gets rid of mainstream media altogether. We can't wait for governments to do anything. Trump's already said these people are liars and deceivers, and yet people still watching. Why? Stockholm Syndrome? As soon as you spend your time, instead of ranting at the TV, which I don't know some of our members do, and the news comes on, or should I say Langley propaganda, go and use your anger and take it out on their Twitter pages or whatever other apps that they have now. We can force these clowns off here. Just let them know we're not going to tolerate their nonsense. And I've heard that there's been some fun and games with the Red Hen, that they've been boycotted now. You know, when did people all of a sudden become interested in politics again? Was it because the portal people, they told them they had to? It just amazes me. Where were all these protests when Bush was in charge? Mind-boggling. More madness in Texas. Of course, we had the jizz woman last year who wanted to fine men $100 and signed the bill for it if they wanted to masturbate without procreating. And they seem to breed some funny people there. But they also got issues with employment discrimination in the community. And Stacey Bailey, who is a former teacher at Charlotte Anderson Elementary School in Arlington, Texas, is suing the Mansfield Independent School District for suspending her for discussing her own sexual orientation in the classroom. Really? Now, the 31-year-old art teacher lives in one of the 28 states where it's legal to suspend or fire someone because of his or her sexual identity. Unbelievable. People power, again. Where are we? This time it's Amazon under fire. Of course, we've had Google under fire, but the people working for Amazon have written to the company's CEO, Jeff Bezos, to protest the sale of the facial recognition tools and other technology to police departments and government agencies. And they're not too happy about that, and they continue to complain, and which has been criticised for enforcing Donald Trump's zero-tolerance policy. And this comes into the ICE using the technology and the Department of Homeland Security. Of course, they're making a big fuss over that as well, when people don't know the full details of what's going on with immigrants and who the parents are and who the parents aren't, or maybe they're not even parents at all. But anyway, the mainstream media are focusing on which has been parents separating from their children at the US border, which was, funny enough, a bill signed by the Democrats. But again, the portal people overlooked those things and just spit out narrative. So the Amazon workers have said, "We demand a choice in what we build and a say in how it's used," the letter states. "We learn from history and we understand how IBM Marduk, systems were employed in the 1940s to help Hitler. IBM did not take responsibility then, and by the time their role was understood, it was too late. We, as Amazon staff, will not allow that to happen again. It's time to act now." Now, Holocaust experts claim IBM's German subsidiary directly supplied the Nazis with technology which assisted the operation of concentration camps in Auschwitz and Treblinka. That's why the Amazon are getting a bit pissy. So they're complaining now, which is good. Of course, this show's long warned about the use or misuse of technology. On Friday, MSNBC Morning Joe, whatever that means, I don't watch it, and its network contributor Donnie Douche, with a silent bag on the end, said President Donald Trump's voters who support his immigration policies were essentially standing at the border like Nazis. Douche said, "This can no longer be about who Trump is. It has to be about who we are. If we are working towards November, we can no longer say Trump is the bad guy. If you vote for Trump, you are the bad guy. If you vote for Trump, you are ripping children from parents' arms. And the mistake that we've made in the past is, look at the bad guy over there, look at the bad guy." What the Democrats have to do is make the next election a referendum on not who Trump is, but who you are. That's the big difference. You can no longer, as a voter, because it's not about taxes, it's not even about some abstract term of immigration or nationalism, he added. If you vote for Trump, then you, the voter, you, not Donald Trump, are standing at the border like Nazis, going, you here, you here. And I think we now have to flip it. It's a given, the evilness of Donald Trump. This is what they're putting on TV. Now, on the same broadcast, co-host Joe Scarborough stated President Trump is openly bigoted towards anyone who isn't white and rich and using rhetoric straight out of Adolf Hitler's playbook. So, this is what they're putting out in the media. It's because they're losing the narrative, they're trying to rewrite history again in their own image. And this is why I've called for the alternative media to shut these people up and shut them down once and for all. Boycott it, stand outside, make them uncomfortable on Twitter, Facebook, you name it. These people are psychopaths, they're dangerous, and they're pushing people into civil war. That's what they want, so they can declare martial law and bedlam again. So basically what we've got is a guy named Douche, like I said, with a silent bag on the end, which means German, along with host Joe Scarborough, now both using faction-based Langley-style scripts that does a 180 on the narrative and blames everyone else of doing what they, Langley, who, let's not forget their name before CIA, was OSS. Coincidence? I think not. Following their role in Operation Paperclip and Operation Overcast that was done by them, and then went on with known Nazis like von Braun and the Scherf family, more commonly known as the Bush family, Nazis. But that report was classic agency bullshit, period. So, Donny Douchebag and Goodnight Joe, please take a runner off our screens with your bullshit. We don't need it. Don't let the door hit you on the head as you leave, or you might reignite a few of your brain cells and learn some truth for once in your life. Perhaps those two people need to be reminded we've been under the Fourth Reich and the Nazis since 1940, and these goons bring it up now as it's about to be brought down. It's beyond parody. Shall we maybe leave them for next week? Yeah. A shooter allegedly at this point has killed 5 people today and wounded others at a newspaper in Annapolis, Maryland. And the police said the suspect was in custody, and a reporter at the Capital Gazette tweeted that a single gunman fired into the newsroom and shot multiple employees. And Phil Davis, who covers the courts and crime for the newspaper, tweeted that the shooter fired through the glass doors into the office. And a single shooter shot multiple people at my office, some of whom are dead. I think the clues in there, why did he keep mentioning single shooter, single gunman, single shooter, single gunman? 3 times in 5 lines? Of course it may be. I suspect this is setting the stage for the planned riot at the weekend. And this person will be likely accused of being a Trump supporter. We'll see what unfolds in the next 48 hours. But I think this is a staged event to set a narrative for the so-called protest riots against Trump planned over the weekend and reinforced by many of the so-called stars and mainstream media calling death for Trump. You know, why aren't these people being rounded up? You have to ask. Asking for the president to be killed and allowed to walk around. Something has to stop, and quickly. Right, we're going to have a music break and then we're going to come back with a portion of last Sunday's show and also the intel, some of which is rather interesting. What should we play next? Yeah, let's start with this. Hi all and welcome back. This is a portion from the special show we did on Sunday. Like I said, there's a lot of people who are not on Facebook, so they may not be aware of that show. And so I'm going to repeat the quantum section and why it was done. And then we're going to get into some intel. Where are we next? Yeah, let's go with that next. Right. So, like I said, on Sunday, it was decided to do a special show because certain information came forward. And regular listeners to this show will have heard some minor aspects of it in recent shows. But basically the information will, in the next piece, will tie this all together. Now, we've worked long and hard to correct many ills of this world, and none more so than Kim, and few would have taken on the task of attempting to take on a whole system, never mind one which was of staggering proportions. And it's all mired in a former, and I repeat, former control system so deeply ensconced that even all the information contained on the internet does not reveal anywhere near the full picture of what has happened here. THI listeners have been given greater access and a better chance to grasp and understand it. But when you think you have a grasp, another deeper layer then reveals itself. Like I've said many times on the shows, it won't be one light switch style event, but a succession of key events that will unfold when the time is right, and this is one of those events. Kim has worked tirelessly with the team to provide a platform from which it's up to us to build upon, and I mean build and not destroy, like the previous control structures have done for many thousands of years. The reality is we have only developed 5% of this world. That's all, 5%. Imagine all the extra jobs if we developed 10%. And yet the clowns with their fake wars have spent many hundreds of years destroying it and then rebuilding the same 5%. It's sheer lunacy. We have to be different in our approach and actions going forward, or this will be all for nothing. And prove the cabal, parents and Draco right all along that we are incapable of progression. Well, I think we are. But it requires us all to unite across all divides and rebuild this Midgard Earth into the beacon of hope it was always planned to be. Now, think and act different is a meme of THI. It needs to be a meme for us all, where we all work together and create a caring, sharing planet, not the competitive dog-eat-dog world we have all endured. Their systems of control have in many parts collapsed, and further portions will quickly follow. What will be left is a handful of complete psychopaths who quite possibly are soulless beings, devoid of compassion, devoid of empathy, and devoid of love, not only of others but themselves. But we have to be ready to fill the shoes of the controllers and their puppets and run this planet for and by the people, plus all the other living beings that reside here, some native to this planet and some that are not. We are at a last chance saloon, in essence, to prove that we can change from a low vibrational children of the universe into a model of fully adult, evolved, evolutionary wise species. We have much to learn. We are children of the universe in many aspects because we've been denied the knowledge to progress to the adult stage. The fight is not over, the fight has just begun. We have much work to do, all of us. We have to correct the 489 aspects of life that has gone badly wrong on this planet for so long. Now, this is what Kim wrote over the weekend. To my dearest all, many speak of a quantum system for the people, and I agree, it is. By definition, in the parts of the world most considerate and unknown. But a quantum system, true quantum, this quantum system can span dimensions. It draws from past time and the future yet to come. It is based on its ability to map through time. It reads brainwaves. It knows your intention and is locked by DNA, living DNA, sequencing of the individual. Not one individual, but all of us. Your wealth within it is coded to DNA of the individual. In the case of nations, it is the RNA of the original source of the said asset. It cannot go anywhere else. Now, this is for the security and the safety of our human family. The way it is programmed, it is not possible for the elite to steal wealth from another person nor another nation any longer. The system does not recognize any royal line, only the line of source, which is present in all of us. We are all sons and daughters of the only true King, that is the Creator, God, stroke source itself. Even myself, Kim, as I program the system to perpetuate with or without me. Trust me, it knows my intent too. It knows if I'm under duress or unwillingly making a transaction. This was to prevent the clowns attempting to abduct Kim, which there have been many attempts, and forcing her to hand over the trust and everything else. That's no longer possible. Even if Kim changes her mind and tries to allocate funds improperly, the system will reject it. So much for the 9,000 or so snatching and grab attempts by the cabal. It won't help one bit. The system reads into all organic life forms, understands growth patterns, and lastly holds massive amounts of data in a compilation of materials the size of a grain of sand. Technology, not even the secret space program, nor the Majestic 12 has had access to ever. Way ahead of what they have. Let alone the current antiquated financial systems you are calling quantum. Gone are the days of data service centres the size of football fields. It calculates true trade values based on real production. There's a novel idea. Not what the elite wants the world to see, but it is based on real production. So it's not, if you produce 100 apples, it's 100 apples, not leverage times 10, and they sell it as 1,000 apples when they only got 100. Same applies with the silver and gold. As of Monday, the market re-evaluation shall begin to occur, and there was a correction on Monday. There will be a steady correction as time goes on. The true production of commodities and their respective values will begin to unfold. This program was launched on Friday after business hours, which is why it was impacted on Monday morning in the markets. The system's power source is not electricity. It is not dependent on any grid. It's not even dependent on crystals anymore. It is powered by the very source of life itself. Yes, the very source of energy that powers you, powers it. It can only operate in the light, rejects darkness and evil intent. Each particle of source courses through its fibre Some of you may know it as the God particle, the fifth element, or the Higgs boson. Each particle is part of a whole. It connects directly to Source itself. It also connects to you. It connects to every living thing in this universe and all other universes. Each particle is a small part of a whole. Like a tiny network computer on a mainframe, it easily passes through the time-space continuum. Think of the possibilities if you could access the secrets of the universe through one small particle. CERN has made attempts to isolate and access this type of technology, and where they failed, we succeeded. For the past 6 weeks, now 7, the system has been running on full source energy. At the point of convergence of the two torus currently flowing through this planet, it is an incredible amount of source energy. It's limitless and constantly regenerating. The same technology will power the global train. The global train does work, and a prototype has already been built and already been tested. Once the funds are released, that project will be rolled out globally. It knows no space, it knows no time, it only knows intention. It is not Source and was not built to replace Source in any way. It is currently harnessing and sharing this source energy with all of you until the original flower of life torus pattern can be restored on this planet, which is essential for our survival. These are the energy grids. When they're all lit up and flowing freely with source energy like it used to in the flower of life pattern, then everything and everyone flourishes. This is why they've been using the ley lines in a negative way. We will also have a far better way to travel. No need for unpentium or other elements harmful to humans. This is the beginning of free energy. It works. Tesla knew, and we know it too. Millions of people die every year over oil and gas. This genocide must and will stop. Has anyone noticed the price of food going up over the last 12 months? And particularly in the last month, roughly by 20 to 30%. Why? Because the cabal-controlled CNN fake media reports oil shortages and the Middle East will run out of oil. And so gas prices go up, and transportation costs go up, and then so does the cost of food. Going forward, this will no longer be the case. It is not possible to have a shortage of oil because it is a regenerating resource. It's abiotic. It's not fossil fuel. And we've not even begun to tap the resources of Russia, America, and many other nations that house oil. Sometimes it's better to beg for forgiveness than ask for permission. But no one needs the cabal oil anymore. The truth is we didn't need it over 100 years ago, but oil will become worthless within the next couple of years. Now, to summarize, a quantum system that has the capacity to map information sources throughout the multiverse. It is powered by a limitless energy source. It holds a football field worth of data in a substance that is the size of a grain of sand. It accounts for intent via hyperpermeable brainwave component and identifies the individual via DNA, which is living DNA, and the origin of assets from RNA and also GNA. Most people will not be familiar with GNA apart from members of THI. If you want to go on thinkdifference.thepeoplesclub.org and listen to Humanity Unplugged 1 and 2, you'll find out exactly what GNA means. Money is just a bunch of numbers in a consistently running algorithm tied to the RNA or origin of its acid base, placing all proceeds into that bucket tied to its origin, RNA, and its people living DNA of that original location. This is what it is programmed to do. It cannot be stopped or changed until the task is complete. I want to make it clear in this, because some people have been struggling with the RNA of nations. Each item has a frequency. So say a diamond comes out of South Africa and the Rothschilds hold it in Asia, and they are saying, well, it came out of Switzerland and so we own it. The RNA signature will be mapped by the quantum system and tell you exactly where that acid came from. So they can't cheat anymore like that. It's like the Canaan bunkers, as it's more commonly known in Indonesia. That gold doesn't belong to Asia. That gold belongs to Russia and Ukraine. Oops. So all the claims that this asset belongs to this country or this group or that group will be rendered obsolete, because all assets have been mapped and their RNA. This is why the Fed, families, bloodline families, cabal and Chinese elders cannot register said assets of the America, Russia, Africa to a server, say in Shanghai, which they attempted to do last Saturday, and yet again it failed. And the reason being is their RNA is not a match, pure and simple. The system also saved Kim a lot of time in constantly identifying access. So I hope this explains the new system, which has been launched, not going to be soon, imminent or 2 weeks, but it is done and it is launched. And one of the tasks of the system was mapping everyone, and now that it's mapped all living beings on this big rock, distribution shall begin. It's impossible to steal funds anymore, even though the corrupt bankers may choose to try and steal from you, the people, like they have for many years. Well, now they can't. The new system will look for the living DNA of person X, consent through the hyperpermeable component. If it's not there, the transaction will not take place. So Rothschilds just can't turn up in any sort of bank, say the Joe Bloggs, and give me my money. It won't work. And Kim's final piece was, so there you have it, a message to all the cabal stooges. I'm not addressing any of you in IDC, for the record. You can take your oil, siphons, satellite diversions and stick them where the source does not shine. Oops. Peace out, Kim Possible. So that was what was contained in Sunday. Right, let's get into the current intel. It's come to our attention because of the going through the system and monitoring certain transactions that have been taking place. This will enrage, or should do. Maybe it's a story that the portal people should cover. I've no doubt they won't. But it was found this week that the IRS has been sending money to the Rothschilds Bank in Switzerland. You want to know how much? 780 billion last year alone. Imagine what we could have done with that. That has to be stopped. We got confirmation this week via Backchatter that the Rothschilds have now confirmed they've lost control of siphoning off the financial systems. We already knew. But they're still telling everyone that they control the SWIFT system. Yeah, right. You can't even control their own incontinence. But they tried. And I think this was the Chinese elders, it might have been the Rothschilds again. But this week they tried to leverage the BLM again to China. For those who don't know, as I know there's still a lot of people blaming BLM for this, that and the other. It's nothing to do with BLM. They did a deal with the trust about keeping the in-ground resources in America. All the rest of it is to do with the Fed. All the shenanigans is to do with the Fed and using BLM as the blame guy. So they tried to leverage all the in-ground assets to China. Well, it was the Shanghai Exchange. And they also tried to, which won't please Mr. Putin, leverage all of Russia's in-ground assets as well. I told you they had nothing left. They're just trying everything now, and it's all failing. Here's another thing that failed. We recently mentioned about a banking transaction of $57 billion in cash. All of it. Which was processed by JP Morgan Chase to facilitate an alleged deal between Bayer buying out Monsanto. And this in essence was not a business transaction. It was a money laundering into the system transaction. And that failed from their point of view. And it's likely Monsanto will disappear into the wind. And as Bayer hasn't got their $57 billion in super notes, which was swiped as an illegal money laundering transaction, I suggest they won't last too long either. Oops. I mentioned in April of the Commonwealth trying to wrap the African countries into their domain and push them onto using the British pound to replace their currencies. This, in essence, is more looting of African resources, or trying to get their hands on any resources because they've got nothing left to leverage anymore. Well, Zimbabwe rejected that vociferously, and then they tried to take him out via the bomb blast which took place last Saturday. You see, the clowns are getting pissy. Their plans are all failing, it seems. Now, thankfully, the president survived. But it is a warning for the rest of Africa that these people are nasty. Do not work or reason with them and take up our offer of sovereignty. You don't need these people. They've never given you anything but looted your whole country. And I'm suggesting that the African countries join as one with Zimbabwe and the Congo and throw these goons out altogether. South American countries also. You don't need IMF with fake badges or otherwise controlling your banks and economies. That hasn't worked out well, has it? For any country, for that matter. Never mind just one. Well, the big kind of item this week is yet again the levels the clowns will go to. We did expect a backlash following Sunday's show and announcement, plus some of the things, the clearance accounts being deleted and some of the illicit illegal trading swiped. But what unfolded was a blaze of threats verbally, and a group of goons turning up in a city in America thinking Kim was there, and their car was laden with explosives, all designated to blow Kim and their daughter up. Now, these people are beyond stupid and completely sick. The question remains, where is the military? People attempting to commit acts of terror on our own soil. What are you doing? Apart from sitting at your desk, shuffling papers and clicking pens. Subsequently, those people were caught, by the way. I don't know their well-being or unwell-being at the moment, I imagine. But this is what happens when you take the system on, and it's something that people forget when they're demanding when's the funds coming, or when's this happening, or when's that happening. Those in the front line are having guns pointed at them virtually every week. Now car bombs. It all will unfold when the time is right. And that's why last week I called for patience. Kim can't do everything. She's already doing far too much as it is. And people have to exercise caution and patience. If people want to know what they can do, pray everything goes okay. Manifest abilities have increased now. Source energy is pouring in. It knows your intention. If it's good, you know what comes next. But it's a stark reminder of how nasty these people are. Well, as I said, they're getting real pissy that they can't have everything their own way anymore, like the financial system. They've tried and launched various systems, be it the Prometheus to Hercules, all ancient gods, a bit like them, or so they think anyway. And now this week they tried to launch another ancient system called the Alpha Omega, which, if memory serves me correctly, they launched last year and that failed as well. So they just trying system after system, because all these systems are replete with backdoors, hacking and siphoning funds systems, so they can loot all the money again. And also try to hack the real quantum system. Well, good luck with that. You see, time has moved on. Humanity has moved on. And whilst they still play sacrifice to the gods game, which is utterly pathetic, as they will not be returning or helping you either. Just wasting a vast amount of resources playing out a checkmate game. You know it's checkmate, and so do we. You can continue the illusion that the gods will come down and save you. They won't. You can continue the illusion that you will take over the system. You won't. We've put in far too many firewalls and other items that renders your participation into it as mute. Zero. So here we are with the next item. Like IBM stood for IB Marduk. I mother effers, which is essentially what they are really. And they decided to send a letter round yesterday, which we got hold of. But the IMF are broke. Just about totally broke. Period. They are a subsidiary of the UN, which has been broken up by the trust, and the funds have been returned to the subsequent nations. So the IMF has nothing left. And the Julius Bio, the president of Sierra Leone, received the email below from the IMF, and apparently it's also been sent to all African countries, and it reads as follows. The IMF officially green-lighted the acceptance of China's currency, the yuan, into the IMF's foreign exchange basket. This move paves the way for the IMF to place the yuan on a par with the US dollar, and this is the latest in a series of global developments that threatens to eliminate the US dollar as the world's reserve currency. Now, experts have predicted that this announcement will trigger one of the most profound transfers of wealth in our lifetime. So if you want to protect your savings and retirement, you better get your money out of US dollar investments and into the one asset class that rises as currencies collapse. Now, according to the IMF, they hold supreme power. The IMF, International Monetary Fund, or IMF, is one of the most secretive and powerful organisations in the world, or they were, and they used to monitor the financial health of more than 185 countries. They establish global money rules and provide bailout assistance to bankrupt nations, which is all lies. Some are warning that any move by the IMF to supplant the US dollar could be catastrophic to American investments. And now the IMF have made the first move, as reported by the Wall Street Journal. They accepted the China's currency, the yuan, into the foreign exchange basket, and this marks the first time in history the IMF has expanded the number of currencies in the foreign exchange basket. This means that the Chinese currency will now become a viable global alternative to the US dollar, according to Juan Zarate, who helped implement financial sanctions while serving in George W. Bush's Treasury Department, once the other currency becomes an alternative to the dollar, rules of the game begin to change. Now, Leong Sing Cheong, Assistant Manager and Director at a major central bank, said the dollar alternative is likely to transform the financial landscape in the next 5 to 10 years. This was part of the letter that the IMF sent out. All of it is complete and utter bullshit. Period. It's just IMF pretending to shout loud, a bit like the Rothschilds. We own this, we're doing that. They're not doing any of it. They don't have no authority whatsoever. It's just the illusion of it. But their thugs are threatening countries trying to collect on debts which may or may not have anything to do with the IMF. And it's important that these countries know that the IMF is bankrupt and power over the UN has been returned to the countries, including the World Bank and the IMF. It was declared null and void by the President of the UN, which currently is Kim, because the UN was part of the trust. Oops. And what happened is Kim then gave every country that owned a share of the UN and retained all the funds. And the UN does not belong to the factions, even if the IMF is still running around doing their bidding. These people work for the nations, each one with an equal share, and not the other way around. So it's important that the nations get a backbone and tell the IMF and the Rothschilds to all sing along now. To the Roths and the IMF. Right, let's get into some op-ed pieces and things I'd like to cover. And I want to cover as an add-on to last week's piece about weakness and strength, because I think it's important. The notion to some men that being spiritual is not a manly thing to do, and it makes them feel uncomfortable. This is yet again another program which dictates certain aspects of society are domains of only female or male oriented. We have to stop doing that. But how is self-development being classed as not manly enough? Who came up with that idea? Now we have to stop and think about how certain aspects of our life are only for one group or another. All that is more limitation and divide and conquer narratives. We've had enough of them. Being spiritual is a return to who and what you really are. The reality is you are the spirit in a human suit, not the other way around. So please stand up for who and what you are, not what society or other people want you to be. You want free will. It's up to you to exercise it. But don't be stating that being spiritual is not manly. That's programming. I received a a minor complaint this week, it wasn't nasty or anything, about, in part, supporting Ronald Bernhardt. It seems he gets mentioned on every show now. Now, the reality is, I don't know whether he's a good guy or a bad guy. I've made that quite clear. I can't be expected to know the ins and outs of everything and everyone. Time always shows. I am concerned of his contacts. ITNJ is not good. Anything involving Robert David Steele, you want to stay clear of. Maybe Ronald doesn't know that. Don't know. But the idea of the show is, because I didn't know, I gave both sides of the narrative so that people can make their own minds up. Like I said last week, let's see if he'll come on our show. Then we can all decide where Ronald stands. But one thing that enrages me, on the very rare occasion that I do, is people being fake. So let's do a roll call of this week's fake. Step forward, portal person herself, Rachel Maddow. Oh boy, did that annoy me. And her false crying, right on cue, emotions about the child migrants issue. Please do us all a favour, Rachel, because you're as false as a glass eye. I'm sorry, you just are. You and your ilk have spent your whole careers in a vacuum of illusion, so please don't try and step out into the real world by attempting false emotions for the children when you and your ilk continue to ignore the real news and the reality of that situation, whether in this country or globally. Let's be honest, you only became a newsreader because you're a failed actress. But what gets me is this talentless script reader, replete with spray-on tears, earns $7 million a year just to lie and deliver bullshittery to the public. $7 million for a talentless has-been. It's time the people remind Rachel and her ilk we won't tolerate her treasonous behaviour, because that is exactly what it is. Remove her $7 million a year, we could employ 234 people at $30,000 a year jobs, or 140 at $50,000 a year. Which has more value? $7 million to read CIA scripts. And the question remains, where were the portal people when 7 million children went missing permanently during the Obama presidency? I'll repeat that again. 7 million American children went missing permanently during the Obama presidency. Where were they then? Now, I hate to get into party politics because people know I don't believe in it. We don't need parties, we just need people doing a job for and by the people. It's that simple. But the irony is not lost on me, as the very people who are shouting loudest about this, the Democrats, are the ones who implemented and signed off on the bill that separated children from migrant parents. You can't make this up. But this is what they're doing on the portal people world. They're accusing others of what they have done. Or is it ramping up? There's another group that's going to get our FBI. Not all, I might add. But this is an exchange that took place during election day when Trump was announced as the new president, which kind of sold his pants a bit. And it stated as follows: all the people who were initially voting for her, Anne, Hillary, would not or were not swayed by any decision the FBI put out. The Trump supporters are all poor to middle class, uneducated, lazy pieces of shit that think he will magically grant them jobs for doing nothing. Quote unquote FBI. This is what we the people are paying for. It's not the first time I've heard that type of statement. Neil Keenan said the same to me on a private call back around Christmas of 2014. I was rather annoyed and told him so. But it is indicative of the agency's thinking. And Keenan worked for the agencies. His term to me, was Americans are all fat, lazy bastards who need to be put to work, not given handouts from Asia again. Really? So, according to the FBI and Langley and Keenan, Americans are uneducated. I tend to agree, or undereducated is a better term. But who implemented that as a policy to render that ideology? Lazy is another label that was thrown out. Who built this country up in 400 to 500 years when other countries who have been operating longer are nowhere near as developed as America? The American people of all colours, races and nationalities. Americans are fat. Again, who implemented a change in the structure of food to cause that condition? Well, perhaps they are fat because so many have had long-term illness or misdiagnosed conditions to force them on medications, most of them of which people don't need. Who implemented those policies? Like the migrant issue, too many focus on the external issue of it and just say throw the migrants out, when the real issue is internally. Migrants are not the problem. They were the solution to the order to cause the exact reaction they were looking for. And when you have the answers to whom created all those issues, then you have who the real problem is. And it's not fat, undereducated Americans, but insidious psychopaths aligned with rogue off-world entities who have no real life of their own and exist entirely to feed off others. So if the FBI and CIA think we're all fat and stupid, perhaps we should remind them vociferously who pays their Judas-style wages. I don't know. Get a badge and become a king of illusion springs to mind. To the good guys in the FBI who are trying to do the right thing, the following does not apply to you. To the FBI and the goons with those comments, here's what we the people think of you. You are not as educated as you thought you were. In fact, you border on being retarded. Please look the word up in case you are too stupid to know what it is. It's spelled R-E-T-A-R-D. Retard. We also think you're taking our tax dollars and using them to dictate policy that is not fit for and by the people, but only fits in with factions and off-world takeovers. That makes you a treasonous cretin. Period. You have not arrested or stopped any of the rampant pedophiles in government, banking, Hollywood or elite circles under Bush, Clinton or Obama. That makes you complicit and a condoner of pedophilia. You did not stop Russian collusion that you allege. You haven't stopped Rockefeller, Rothschilds, Soros, Kissinger, Cheney, the UN, the IMF, and the Federal Reserve collusion either. That makes you incompetent assholes. And either unable to see the bigger picture or completely complicit in it all. You also failed to address the rampant drug problem perpetrated on our own soil by clans in Virginia. Not one arrest of a CIA agent. Again, that makes you incompetent and or complicit. So before you start throwing out shit about American people, learn to look after your own shit first, then we can debate on it. Migrant. Hi all and welcome back. 2 more pieces before we go on to Q&A. One of the problems we're going to face coming up is once the top end order and the families are dealt with, we have a problem of gangs globally as what we do with them. And I was asked last week what I would do about gang problems as we go forward, and so I'm going to put forward something that I came up. This is for drugs in particular, and I first came up with this idea back in the 1990s when I was working in social services back in the UK. And the issue with drugs and people know my opinion of them and the reasons why. And personally, I literally do not comprehend or understand the use of psychedelic drugs or narcotics. To me, it makes no sense whatsoever. But perhaps if people know the real truth on the damage it does cause, maybe some would see it the same way as I. But it is what it is, and people have a free will choice. But the people who choose not to participate also have a free will choice to reject it as well. So what do we do to solve the problems and also keep people happy in a transition period? And I don't mean between 3 and 4 or 5D by that either. I mean from the current environment to a new way of operating. You can't just eliminate a whole program and a whole set of gangland warfare that has made a certain group of people in society a whole heap of money and also control, and not replace it with something that gives them a way to continue their funding in a way, but ultimately phase out the original concept, which is death and destruction. Most gangs are now generally owned by cabal agencies or family groups, with them having been dealt with or removed. We still have a lot of gang members who will see it as an opportunity to rule the roost and continue the violence and destruction programs. But what if the agencies hands over all the top-end names? The ones who've committed murder should ultimately go to prison. But there's a load of runners, as they're called. What if those runners are collected and given a choice? Work to help get people off drugs or face X number of years in jail. Now, I would like to see all drugs legalised, even though I don't like it. Why? As it would solve a number of issues. One, it eliminates agencies profiting off it for black budgets. Two, it deals with the gang and subsequent crime problem. Three, people can get help. Four, it is done in a controlled environment. 5, it is proven to reduce crime. 6, improve people's health and understanding of it. 7, increases taxes, which can be used to fund more affordable healthcare to all people. 8, frees up prisons. 9, frees up cops to interact with their communities again. 10, makes our communities much safer again. 11, will drastically reduce murders. 12, it will be a source of income and a boost to the poorer economies who grow or make these drugs. 13, our military wouldn't be using vast resources and risking people's lives, like in Colombia, Nicaragua, Cambodia or Afghanistan, to name but a few. All those operations were mainly to take control of drugs. So how can this be done? Well, you create a drug division in social services or a hospital. Funny thing is, it might make some doctors and nurses realise they're just highly paid drug pushers as well. I don't mean all of them before I get a load of flack back, you know. Where the drugs that have been legalised can only be sold in a social services shop or a wing of the hospital, which takes it off the streets and away from gangland control. The people who want drugs go to the centre with staff of people who have sold or taken drugs and wish to put back into society. They make a lot of money. You're going to have to provide them with a position with the equivalent money or similar, and also give them a chance to give back to society. Now, the people who want the drugs, there should only be 4 questions. 1, name. 2, the address or the contact number. 3, do you want help with your addiction? Yes or no? And 4, if the answer is no, what item and how much do you require? That's it. No civil servant lectures or a raft of their mind-numbing rhetoric of bullshittery they all seem to spit out like clones working for social services. And what this now applies is that it throws the responsibility onto the people for their own actions, onto the people who choose to purchase the drugs. They're not going down some back alley and collecting needles, which creates health issues. It's a controlled environment by people they are familiar with who have actually sold them the drugs, or they're recovering from drug addiction and can help them. They exercise their free will choice, and no one else is responsible but them. No rules, no regulations, no incarcerations. They have made their own choice. What this also does is remove the rebelliousness that people have, which is almost childlike in many ways. when told not to do something, many go and do exactly what they were told not to do. I know, I was classic at it. So with no stimulus of I'm going against the system and doing something illegal, a fair amount of people will actually quit because of that, because it's now legal. This has been proven in Holland and also Venezuela, who, funny enough, have carried out this plan almost to a letter of something that I said back in 1997, although the manager who was interested in it was moving to Venezuela the year I left, which is 2002. So maybe she implemented it. Who knows? But what it has done, it's worked very well. Crime has gone down enormously, and so has the people taking the drugs. Now the funds that are generated, which is now taxable and not going into criminals' pockets, can also go into education programs, which creates more jobs to really educate the public of not only the external dangers, but the far more damaging internal dangers that these drugs produce. Too few people are aware of what they're getting into with the dark spirits and the possession of the vessel that these psychedelic and narcotic drugs induce. I will continue in other shows about ideas of how to deal with certain problems, because it's something people need to start thinking of. Perhaps people can expand on it and come up with other ideas. You know, it's not all about me. I've said this all along. It's to stimulate people into thinking into a better way of dealing with the current world problems that we face. You can't just end drugs overnight, because then you've got an awful lot of gang people who don't know any better. They were making a lot of money, now all of a sudden they're making none. Well, you have to replace that in some way. I know one of the things was putting the Yakuza and the triads in charge of the legal drugs as a way of keeping them going in a way without the violence. That's one of the biggest problems, is the violence. This is my patch and you sold this on my patch. It's all divide and conquer. It's all cabal again. If people want to do it, that's their free will. But at least they have a chance of doing it in a clean environment where they have an opportunity, where someone asks them, do you want help with your addiction? Yes or no? Safe environment. So it's something people should consider. I've mentioned Greenland and the country being an issue before, and there's something just not right about it. And I came across an article this week on the Greenland Theory, Apocalypse Now 2014, which explores the unrecognised but mighty conspiracy which has been hidden from humanity for ages, unfortunately to the detriment of all life forms which have inhabited planet Earth. Now, it goes on to say, briefly, the Roman Empire, commonly referred to as ancient Rome, evidently faked its own death 715 years ago, and now exerts command and control over all 209 nations of the world through its primary proxy state of Switzerland, which is the home of CIA, not Langley. Now this was, which was coincidentally formed 1300 years ago, which is approximately 715 years ago. Now, historians are now saying that there was at one stage roughly 1,300 years were added to the modern Gregorian calendar. Now, in a previous theory I mentioned last year, something went amiss between 700 and 1,000 years. There's little to no history. These people are now suggesting they added 1,300 years onto the Gregorian calendar, taking the world to the date of when this was written, 2015. Now, the Roman New Year is not January the 1st, it's April the 1st, April Fool's Day. Now, the 1,300 years, according to this theory, which were added to the calendar, are commonly referred to as the Dark Ages, because they never saw the light of day. Now, the capital of the Roman Empire was the city of Babylon, modern-day Rome, Italy. And though it was later publicly moved to Constantinople, which is modern-day Istanbul, and was renamed Jerusalem, the true capital was secretly moved to the city of Thule, which was founded on the island of Greenland. So this backs up what I'd said in the previous show, the issue of Thule and Greenland, and the alleged fall of the Roman Empire and the notion that Greenland is mostly covered in ice and snow are both colossal hoaxes perpetrated onto the world in order for Rome to collectively deceive and survive her enemies of the day, i.e. the Persian Empire, the Yuan dynasty, the Ming dynasty, and for the Roman Empire to thrive unchecked and unabated. And it goes on to say this is why today the countries of China and Iran have the harshest and strictest form of totalitarian fascist rule, for Rome cannot afford to have the respective histories of these formerly great empires brought into light. So they make these countries appear to be, these are nasty, and these are satanic, and these are this, all bad, 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 communists, bad, bad, bad. And it's all about controlling the history. Of course, the same happened with Russia, which we covered in those shows recently, From Russia with Love. All about erasing the history. Now, the Romanization of the Chinese was not restricted to only its language, which now features English-like characters. It came after years and years of Roman aggression, to which the Chinese responded by building what is known as the Great Wall of China. And the collective histories depicted in the Bible and the cultures commonly referred to as ancient Egypt, ancient Samaria, ancient Greece, ancient Babylon, ancient Rome, and the Vikings are the comprehensive historical evolution of the same line or lineage of man, which originated from Minos of Crete in Greece. Now, collectively, these respective histories have purposely been altered, fabricated, and twisted in order to hide a millennium of fascist Roman rule over the Mediterranean, Europe, and now the entire world. And the idiom, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, is literally and figuratively true, as evidence of Rome's domination and rule over the world is readily evident in the architecture, calendar, currency, flags, names, numerology, university, and symbols which currently represent almost every single entity on earth. As you say, after all, Rome wasn't built in a day, meaning that the secret it takes a long time to do an important job could not be more true, as the world is ruined and ruled by modern-day Rome. But to me, I support. I don't think everything was to do with Rome, but I posted this for this show because it backs up the fuel people is Greenland. And I've said it many, many times in these shows, it doesn't make sense when you see how far south Greenland is for it to be iced over the whole year round. Either it's all fake, the ice, or somebody has deliberately iced it over, a bit like Antarctica. Some would argue they can't do that. It's a vast land. Look at all the deserts. Lagoons of the past. Those areas where there are deserts now were not there originally. This planet did not have deserts. They were all created by advanced weaponry of the past. So if they can completely wipe out lush tropical land and turn it into desert, it's not beyond the possibilities or comprehension that they can turn the whole land into ice with tunnels underneath. Why won't they let people fly over the poles? Maybe it's not all ice. Maybe, as General Byrd stated, was part of it as lush tropical green grass around the poles. Oh my. Well, I think as time moves on, we're going to start hearing a lot more about Greenland, because it's like, it's such a vast country. Well, even if the northern part of it could be considered iced over all year round, the southern part is level with halfway down Canada, and yet Canada's not under ice all year round, is it? The only parts that are melted is next to the ocean water, some of which, because of the Gulf Stream, carries the warmer water from the Gulf. So, particularly in the south of Greenland, there is some habitation there. But the northwest has ET bases. And that I do know. Right, let's get into some Q&A. These are some are this week and some are last week and some are the week before. We see a number of news articles in mainstream media relating to various countries purchasing or considering purchasing Russian S-400 air defence systems. Could this be taken at face value, although it is the MSM? But I got thinking that maybe many of these news stories are really a metaphor for something else, an open signal to those involved that alliances or agreements in other areas have been forged. Is this wishful thinking or an overactive imagination on my part, or could there be more to this theory? Well, I think what is happening is certain countries are joining together and deciding we're not giving Halliburton and Lockheed Martin and Boeing and all other cabal-oriented SSP companies more money to then go and wipe us out. So they're giving it their funds to Russia. And apparently the military equipment is way advanced than ours. despite what the military and media people tell us here. So why not go with the better system? It could be just that, but it's likely to have more than one agenda, which is A, cutting off Lockheed Martin and the American cabal-controlled war machines, and 2, a coalition with Russia and maybe going forward and helping them. Let me say I like Putin and Russia and all that, but why did they choose to apply and host the FIFA World Cup, the biggest bread and circus phenomenon of them all, total divide and conquer and a massive source of louche farming, when we all know FIFA is totally corrupt, as well as those ugly cabal companies like Coca-Cola, McDonald's, MasterCard, Adidas, etc. that are sponsoring the World Cup? Well, it can be used in 2 ways. Soccer, football, has become big money and is a major source of money laundering currently, because it has become a global phenomenon. You know, it's even become popular in America now, which was traditionally has shunned the European main game. So where there's money, there's corruption. There always is. And yes, the big companies use it to self-promote themselves or reaffirm their programming messages which are contained within their adverts. But it's up to the people to turn around and say, I'm not buying your products. Just because they offer it to us doesn't mean to say we have to accept. But as regards Russia having it, it's fine. It should be shared out. It can't always be staged in certain more popular football countries. It's a global sport. And so it's being shared around the world. So I've got no qualms about it going to Russia, and in 2022 it's going to Qatar. Fine. It can bring a lot of people together, like music. It can bridge the divide. Doesn't have to be a divide and conquer, but yes, it can also be a louche farming, which is why the stadiums are bowl-shaped. Take that one on. Not yet. I only came across your warning about ayahuasca, so my question is, how do I know that I'm possessed, and how do I get rid of that possession? Well, has your behaviour drastically changed? Do you do things and think, I don't know why I did that? Repeatedly. There's a number of things that will take me more to go into it. But once that possession's in, you then have to develop a meditation and spiritual side to then be able to self-cleanse yourself of that. Plus reinforcement of non-consent. There are some people, very few, who can remove these possessions, but it has implications for those people as well, unless they do it properly. As if you go in with no shielding, you just ended up with the same spirit entity in you that you just removed. Plus it uses up a lot of your life force energy. It's very draining to remove those type of entities. Well, I would, like I've always said, it's people's own choice. But I have a right to warn people of the dangers. You still want to go ahead and do it, that's your responsibility. You have been told of both sides of it. But you have no idea of the dangers that you're putting yourself in taking that stuff. And people can argue that this shaman's good and this one's good. They're only interested, the reality is, in taking money. They're largely in areas that are rather poor. And it's, from what I gather, it's fairly expensive. It's like winning the lottery for them each weekend or whenever these ceremonies take place. Of course, we did have Willow Nitsuma, who was on an evening with Thomas in one of the first couple of shows. I think it was the second show I ever did. And she's actually been to these ceremonies and is warning about the dangers now. Perhaps you should listen to her. She's taken it and she's also seen the dangers. Can you tell me how Anu, a reptilian Draco, created humans and where I can find more information? I don't think they did. I think I know they didn't create humans. They messed with genetics. So maybe you're getting mixed up with that a bit. They seem to think that that we belong to them, but they can think whatever, like the Rothschilds or the Rothschildians. They can think what they like. Reality is different. Who are the tribes and where are they? They're dotted all over the world. There's many thousands, and there's about 5, from what I gather, of the main original ones. The Aboriginal is one of them, but they're dotted all over the world. How many Draco are left, and who are they? I don't think there's that many, and none of them have the power and control and influence that Marduk had. The ones that are left are just irritants more than anything else. Who made us and how? I don't know that answer. It's catch-22. Chicken and egg. Why are they keeping it from us? I'm not too sure what that question's about. Do you know about anything about a human sacrifice table at the sub-basement of the White House? No, and I've not heard of that. I've heard of one in the Vatican. As you go down the steps from the pulpit or whatever they call it, there's one down there. In fact, there's several. Nice place, not. How do you see the new money system getting introduced to the world and the implications of exposing the old system? Will the feds finally be outed as criminals? Well, that's still being worked on. It's more to do with safety now of the individuals who are receiving the funding, and also the safety of the IMF going around claiming everything, and the Rothschilds claiming everything when they own nothing, literally nothing. They're spent forces. They're bankrupt also. And once people stop kowtowing to them, it's all over. All the spouting is an illusion that they're still in control of everything when they have nothing. And it just needs a few people of courage in various agencies or military or countries or continents to turn around and tell them, like the song says, F you. They've got nothing left. They've got nothing to offer. They've not offered anything to we the people ever. So why are we even continuing to play their game? It's a failed system. They failed. And like I've said earlier, the system, the original system, was in place because this planet was being harvested of all resources, including us. You know, people often ask, all these countries and all these people are all in debt. Who owns the debt? Nobody. Nobody on this planet, anyway. Only then does it, having massive amounts of debt, make any sense. Like I've said in previous shows, 70% of world trade was off-world. It's not no more, it's been stopped. Then you understand why there's so much debt. Because they've been forcing us into giving stuff away, and we get trinkets, but it's not we, the people's getting the trinkets, it's the goons in the military and the SSP. So we provide everything and we get nothing. That's why the trade has been stopped. And then when they can't provide, the debt mounts up. And then they think that belongs to the people who have got no benefit from it. No, it doesn't. That debt is yours, not ours. The families, the Fed, the Order, and the factions own the debt, along with the bankers, not the people. But why are they continuing a system that was only working when the purpose was to loot the whole planet? Resources, people, everything, off-world. Now, if you keep collecting resources and nobody has nothing left, who's going to buy your bullshit products? It's the Ouroboros again, the snake eating itself, and that's what they're doing. They can't, even if they carried on, they would eventually collapse in on itself, because their program is not for on-world, it was an off-world program. So they didn't care about the debt. But if all the funds and all the assets and all the resources goes to one group, no one's got anything left. And they need us to participate. It doesn't make sense. And that's the stupidity of these goons in the former Illuminati and the factions continuing a program that was not for the benefit of this planet. They're too stupid to see it. Or too frightened. What is the true purpose of creating a Space Force as a new branch of military? Well, we have a lot of technology that will eventually be released. And we also have a problem of SS small p. And no, they're not good. Corey or not. They have a lot of technology that is ahead of us. And we need to build our own. But I hope the Space Force doesn't include weaponry pointed at the planet. I have a feeling that will get blocked if that takes place going forward. We will need a Space Force for any future invasion. When certain groups find out we have a lot of resources again, and trade deals have all gone down. So we will need a Space Force, and it's no use relying on SS Nazi program people. What year was it the early arrivals came here? You stated that they were dropped into crappy families or difficult circumstances. Could you please expand on that? As I understand, it was late 50s, early 60s, the first arrivals of those who were here with more DNA or stronger frequencies, as I understand it. And many of them were dropped into very programs by the cabal and the off-world because they knew the frequency. Some of us managed to survive all that and still fight on. But there was changes made in the second batch and then the third batch where it became easier for those souls that are coming here to help to adapt. Once the final ones were the ones after 2000, which is why they then introduced ADHD and given people Ritalin, which basically cuts off the neurons in the brain. So, hope that helps. I'll wait for time. I need to. How are things going with KLM? KOM. No idea. No. I don't think. Well, I know we won't be working with them again. Given that the group have continued to make threats, not only to Kim, but anyone that questions them. I find it all very, very disappointing. So I don't think I will be mentioning Kingdom of Mana ever again on this show, preferably. Under what laws the planet and humanity currently subject to? Is it martial law? Partially. I think that's about to end or has just ended. So, when is the harvesting of humans going to be stopped? Largely it already has. Largely. Not all. Who is responsible for stopping the harvesting? Strange question, and I'm certainly not answering that one. I'm confused. If Kim is giving the Donald 30-something billion to build the wall, why is he talking about making Mexico pay for the wall? Is 30 billion not enough? Could it be Mexico will pay, but not in funds? Think about that. Funds are there for the wall. With the coming rollout of 5G, do you have any info on plans to stop it? There are plans. I do have some info, and no, I'm not putting it out. What is going on in regards to colds and sickness? Last week it seems a ton of people were afflicted by cold or flu-like symptoms. Is this soul-related or more population control? It could be a range of things. It could be you absorbing the source energy, which is forcing out the latent symptoms. So it all comes out. Get rid of the virus and replace it with the source energy. We know governments are just puppets for the rulers, so who actually runs the world? Top Illuminati, black nobility, Jesuits, the Vatican's ET, or a mix? I covered this in a recent show, 2 shows back, the full details of the order, the factions, etc., etc. Please refer to that show. There is so much out there stating that we are going to have a flip on the planet. Can you go into some detail? It's already flipping. What is not flipping is the whole planet itself. It's been done in stages so that it doesn't create the fear porn programming, the goons on YouTube and the agency script writers in the alternative media. There will not be a flip over and a giant tsunami and the continent slipping into the ocean and all that other rubbish. Ignore it. Fear porn. I've been telling people that for the last 5 years. Do you have any intel or opinion on the visit of King Philippe to the White House? No, sorry. Too much to catch up on, and that wasn't one I got to cover. Any idea how much longer before the cabal is no longer under the control of all the harmful Wi-Fi and EMF frequencies and it's changed to neutral or positive frequencies, or will the latest source energies more or less neutralise than before that? Mixture of both. I'm not giving dates of when. Builds people up, and when it doesn't come to fruition, people get all deflated and get rather pissy. Things will get done in the right time. Like I said, I keep repeating, there is an inner war which is all behind the scenes, and that's the most important war we have to win. We've won that war rather heavily. And I know people are wanting the external war where everything is visible, but you will not see the external without the internal. And there would be utter chaos. And you also have to be careful about, some people say, I'm tired of it being all behind the scenes. We want to see it out in the open. Trust me, you don't. You really don't. It's badly ugly. Like I said, in the intel, people driving around with carloads of explosives to blow someone up who's doing their best for humanity. This is what we're dealing with. And we have to start thinking in better ways of what is the hidden war. All of it's been covered in the various shows. And I know some people want the funding now, and some people want the chemtrails ended, and some people want the mass arrests, and some people want this, that and the other. But there's only so many people can do in one given day, week, month or year. Largely those people are operating without resources, without help of organisations. And in some cases, with little or no financial support. But the source energies will neutralise some things. Can you give a quick rundown or outline of what divine law is? Could you, and the second question, another question, could you please give us a little more information about divine law, such as its origin? I don't wish to be rude, but I shouldn't have to tell people who are awake what divine law is. You already know. You already know. That's 3D thinking. We have to start thinking on a higher level than that. And I'm not being rude to the people who asked, because you're not the only two. Think about the question itself. Common law, natural law, aren't they man-made laws? You could also, instead of saying divine, you could also say cosmic law. I'm wondering why you've never mentioned the 5G rollout, because I don't know enough about it. I just don't know. If you want to find out about 5G, go and check the archives on the OYM radio show. They've had a couple of people on mentioning about 5G, and you're probably best going to their show. Like I said, I cover many topics in these shows. I've never been called to look into that, maybe because it will get stopped when it needs to be stopped. We'll see. I know Kim was one of those speaking in the interview with the council. Is this where she received knowledge help to program a quantum system run on source power? No. Can you also speak about what Kim means by now it has mapped all living beings on this rock, distribution shall begin? What are the greater implications of this? Well, I could spend an hour talking about that. Well, now everything's being mapped. We should have an official count of all living beings. So no more harvesting. And it will prevent, going forward, families and elites stealing off each individual, because the DNA has now been mapped. Maybe in the future we'll have certain debit cards or credit cards which can't be corrupted, can't be stolen, can't be misused. The distribution shall begin when the time is right. The distribution is the return of all the funds back to the people via the projects and the humanitarian programs and whatever else good ideas people come up with. Thomas, you told us once before to get physical silver if we could. When you did the last show, you did not mention silver or gold when you said currencies would remain in place. Will physical silver and gold be useless because they're not considered a currency? They're part of an asset-based system. Kim covered this in the last show she was on, and the previous one. You know, some countries have got silver. America hasn't got any gold. It's got some underground, but the physical collection of gold belongs to every other country bar America, because they've looted it, transferred it to Asia, and you name it. So if it goes to a gold standard and America's got no gold, that means it's bankrupt. But America's got other assets it can use, and so the currencies, quote unquote, will be the assets that are based in each country. South Africa assets could be based on diamonds, but they may not have another item. So if you're based it on silver and gold, and South Africa has only got diamonds, that then discounts them in the old system. So what's going to take place is all the assets, in-ground assets, and what's held, and the old assets that have been removed and stolen will be returned, because it's all been mapped at the point of origin. That then equates to an asset-based GDP for that nation / country. So asset-based, not necessarily a coin, silver or gold-based assets. Some countries only have wood as an asset. You discount them because it's not classed as gold and silver. So it's going to be a lot fairer where every country is based on their own assets. That's the starting point. I'm hoping we push and get people in place in real governments or assemblies where we address this issue that oil in North Dakota belongs to America. No, it belongs to everyone, and so we share all the resources. And no, that way in the future we're preventing any one country becoming superpower or dominant or controlling. How do we incorporate God source within each of us? I covered this in an earlier show 2 weeks ago. C60, any intel on that? The science rat study brought out impressive blood results and the testimonials, cessation of multiple systems, even fast recovery from exposure to direct energy weapons and enhanced psychic abilities. But then there's a controversial side that note from military industrial complex can be benign, and C60 has thrown folk into synthetic programming via nano across the blood-brain barrier. Yes, I've heard both sides. I know Randy has covered it on his show. I'm not just sure whether he's covered both sides of it. I know he was mentioning about C60 a couple of months ago. Again, I've not looked into it. But humans are not rats, are they? And we have to be very, very careful. And if it has come out of the military industrial complex, they've never done anything for our benefit. I don't know. I have not researched it enough. I'll wait for time. It's a mess in Europe, although the media is covering up. Thomas, could you give an update on what the people in Europe and Holland can expect for coming months? Will the battle be fought over our heads, or will we be forced to give in? The sister of Queen Maxima has committed suicide or was suicided, which could be a warning for the European royals to step down or cooperate in this case. Well, there's about 6 questions in one there. Every country will undergo certain changes. I'm not giving timelines. The full backlash of what Kim has done is yet to, although it's sent ripples, those ripples will keep coming and keep coming. And changes will take place accordingly. They have no option. As for the royals, I covered this in the Factions show in November of 2015. The Royals are no longer players in the game. They're just not a player. Now, the Queen of England, who is a sovereign, can still play the game, but is choosing not to, as I understand it, because they decided that she was lower level and took all her wealth and power and authority away. But she can still block programs, which is what she's been doing, as I understand. Much to the chagrin of Prince Charles and Philip, who have tried to take her out more than once. So the European rules, which royals, which is part of the original 6 kings, i.e. the Vikings, VI6 kings, are really not big players anymore. They got stripped of everything to keep the order in the game. Once the financial aspect of it all started collapsing in around them, when the trust was taken off them and blocked in many ways from 2007 onwards, it was completed the takeover by 2012, and they no longer had any access to it. That's when they started removing the assets of the lower rank. We may think they're the higher rank, but they're not. They're the lower rank. Maybe some of those royals should come and help us more. As the quantum system fits into a space the size of a grain of sand, how is it not being swept into the dustbin or lost? Not possible. You mentioned in last Sunday's show this is the beginning of free energy. Does this mean that Tesla's free energy generator will be available to us all, or will the grid be powered by large multi-dwelling generators? Over time, the free energy will be introduced. Over time. We're still dealing with the old technology energy people, be it the Rockefellers or the Rothschilds, and the oil conglomerates who want to continue with the old technology. But eventually oil will become largely worthless, and they will be overpowered and removed, and the new technology will be released. When that happens, I'm not giving dates. Right, that's 3 hours. A couple of more questions. Let me answer this one, although I've answered this at least 3 times now, I think. Although we do have new members. Well, David Icke, decades-long courageous and inspiring work was the initial catalyst that launched my journey down the rabbit hole in search for truth so long ago. Although I didn't know him personally, I felt to a degree that we shared a kindred spirit. I am not by nature one who either instigates gossip or participates in dirty details. However, I am struggling to put that lone statement to rest. If there's anything, just a bone you could throw in my direction. He's possessed, he's taken off well, replaced by an android, succumbed to bribery. Any small detail that helps me, I would be most grateful. David Icke's done a lot of good work, but David Icke sold out the minute he went in with Alex Jones. Jones is not working for the benefit of the people. Jones is working for one of the factions, always has been. It's called COINTELPRO. And the fact that David Icke jumped in with Jones suggested to me that he'd finally decided to give up what he was doing, as it was more profitable to be with Jones than struggling along with the people. Now, since then, there was an incident a couple of years ago, where there was £300,000, which is roughly $60,000, that was created for Ike to go on and create a TV programme, which all £300,000 went missing, and David Icke and his son won't answer the questions of where it went. Subsequently, David Icke's now joined in with the Blue Chicken Group. It's up to you whether you want to continue supporting David Icke, but it suggests to me that he sold out when he went in with Alex Jones. Should that negate all of his earlier work? No. But anything in the last 4 to 5 years, to me, should be considered dubious. I don't think he's come out with anything new in the last 5 years, in my opinion. I could be wrong. I just don't get time to follow them anymore. And the final question is more of a statement. Ask Kim if Mayor Amschel Rothschild's motto is still valid with her Manor World Trust. Let me issue and control a nation's money, and I care not who writes the laws. And my response is, let us assure the Rothschildians we don't care what they think they control, either money or laws, as we know they speak out of their asses and own jack shit. So when certain people stop treating them like gods and realise they are emperors with no clothes, no funds, little assets, and more importantly, have zero humanity in their decrepit, insidious reptile vessels they house, it'll be a joyous day for all. Quote unquote. Right, on that note, we're going to end tonight's show. If anything comes up of importance, which it could do these days, things are rather fluid, then we will have an extra show like we did on Sunday. If not, I'll be back next Thursday, and we'll see what unfolds. Things are happening quicker now, but watch the news in a way and reverse it, because they're spitting out an awful lot of bullshit and fear porn. Don't fall for it. And they're trying to steer the narrative, because essentially not only have they lost the financial system, they've lost the narrative as well. And that's part of the external war, the narrative, where people are seeing them collapse in on themselves, which we did say would happen on this show. The masks of illusion are falling on everyone. They're going to make big fools of themselves. And they already are. Important for us to all stay calm, stay balanced, try and step out of 3D thinking and think on a higher level. We're going to need it going forward. It's not a case of when. It's a case of if and when. We are winning heavily where it matters. Try and support your fellow people in the community as much as you can, because it will get ugly. It is getting ugly. But ultimately we can see that that their ugliness is all rhetoric, mainly. it doesn't have the clout or the threat it once had. It's all an illusion. This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams.